Hello and welcome to another thought for the day. I do believe this is number 80. We start at Mark chapter 15 and we're looking at verse 21, which is entitled The Crucifixion of Jesus. But today actually we're going to be only looking at the lead up to it really. So just a few verses, starting at verse 21 of Mark 15. If you've got your Bible, open it at that. If you haven't got a Bible, you could pause, go and get the Bible and come back, and then we can read it together. So Mark 15, starting at verse 21. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And when they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him, dividing up his clothes, as they cast lots to see what each would get. Now this, as you know, Thought for the Day is not intended to be a Bible study, but I do want to point out a few things in this passage today. As Jesus is paraded through the streets on the way to the crucifixion, he would have gone through all the marketplaces, all the streets which would have been packed with people. He was made to carry at least the crossbar, the wooden beam that he would hang on when crucified. And this crossbar alone, it was a big lump of wood. It would have weighed anything from, 75 to 125 pounds. And when the victim carried the crossbar, he usually was stripped and his hands were quite often tied to the wood, so he couldn't let go of it, couldn't drop it. He had to carry it. However, Jesus was just too weak to carry it from all the beatings and the punishment that he had gone through. And, the Romans preferred to keep their victims alive until they were actually crucified, because a public crucifixion was really good propaganda for the Romans. So when Jesus fell under the weight of the cross, no Roman was going to go and help him. A centurion could be able to compel a Jew to carry the cross, but if they did that, that might lead to a riot. What right have the Romans to pick on a Jew to carry a criminal's cross, etc., etc.? So the best solution really was to make a stranger carry the cross. And here they found a foreigner, Simon from Cyrene in North Africa, hundreds of miles away. And they saw him in the crowd and they picked him out and they compelled him to carry the cross. Now, Simon was probably visiting Jerusalem as a Passover pilgrim from his native land. Remember, it was Passover time and lots of people would come from all over to Jerusalem at that time. And he probably knew little, if anything, of Jesus. And I'm sure he didn't want to be involved with a criminal and his crucifixion. But we're told they compelled him to bear his cross. I wonder what Simon made of this after the event. I'm sure before, at that time, when he was compelled to carry it, I wonder if he was kind of thinking, what am I doing here? Who is this guy? And so on. But afterwards, once he knew about what had happened, I wonder if it took on a new meaning for him. Obviously, he was now, in retrospect, known, because we're told in this passage about him that he had a father and a mother, Rufus and Alexander, and he was coming into the country, so they'd obviously tracked him down. I don't know if it was Peter or Mark or someone had tracked him down to know who he was, and perhaps he became a Christian, perhaps he was known to the church at that time. So I wonder what Simon made of the very fact that he was the one that carried the cross for Jesus to Golgotha. There were specific places right outside the walls, the city walls of Jerusalem, where people were crucified. Usually where many passers-by would stop and be able to see how the Romans dealt with criminals. They would have crosses along the roadside. They would have crosses on a hillside, but very publicly displayed. And here Golgotha is mentioned. And it's Golgotha means the place of the skull. Well, we really don't know for sure where this was, other than outside the city wall. Some think it was a place just littered with skulls, the skulls of previous victims, previous criminals who had been put on the cross. Some think it was called Golgotha because it was on or by a hill that looked like a skull. And in fact, if you go today to Jerusalem, there is a kind of a hill, a rock, craggy kind of rock, which if you look at the right angle does look like a skull with the two eye sockets and so on. And that actually is quite near what I believe now, I haven't been for a long while, but what was certainly when I was there, a bus station in Jerusalem. That was a very public place. But can you or I even imagine what this was like for Christ? This was the perfect, mighty Son of God who was there right at the creation of the world. And now the people of the world he created were torturing him. And he was there to pay the price of sin, all sin, every sin, our sin, and yes, the sin of those nailing him to the cross. Could he have avoided it? Absolutely he could, but he didn't. You are of such value to God that Jesus Christ went through this for you. And I'll just leave that with you right now as your thought for the day. Take it in, and then maybe bring your own prayer to God. I normally finish with prayer, but think about this whole event and what Jesus was doing and what it means for you. Just as Simon of Cyrene probably stopped and thought what it meant for him. Pause and think, and then pray. I'll be back with you soon. Bless you.